Thanks everybody for coming. This is Business in the Capital. This is the Technology and Entrepreneurship track. There are 3 other tracks as well, but Technology and Entrepreneurship will be going on every single month, once a month, as will the other tracks. And thought we would try to do a topic that you all can relate to. You should probably use social media every single day. And these are folks that actually make a living off of it, which is kind of cool. And we are in the business school, of course. So we're going to go until 4:30. And note that we do have a hashtag, and so feel free to say whatever you want on Twitter. And I will actually be looking for your questions via Twitter, and maybe we'll get questions from people who are not here. We'll see. And I'll try to be listening and looking at my phone all at the same time and not being rude and being constructive and productive. So I'm not sure that's really going to work. I might just say, hey, raise your hands like the old-fashioned way, but we'll see how it goes. So what can I tell you? We're going to do, I'm going to pepper these guys full of questions probably for the first, till about, I don't know, maybe for half an hour or 45 minutes, and then I'll leave at least the last half an hour and maybe the last 45 minutes for questions from you guys. All right, so first of all, well, and also, if you want to reach these folks, right, they have their Twitter handles up there, and you can obviously come down later and meet anybody you want and that sort of thing. But I thought we would just go down the row here and have them introduce themselves and tell you guys what their company does with social media specifically. So who you are, what your company is, and what you guys do.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming out. My name is Peter Lamott. I'm Senior Vice President and Chair of the Digital Practice at Levick. Levick is a communications firm here in DC, has a legacy of being a crisis communications firm. And about 2 years ago, they recruited me away from, I ran a startup that was an online ad agency based off of crowdsourcing, which is how I know Tom. In fact, I will give you the credit here in front of all of your students that Tom and I, gosh, about 5 years ago, I worked for the company. It had a failing business model. And Tom and I, sitting at a diner in Bethesda, sort of said, God, wouldn't this be better if it worked this way? Fast forward about 1.5 years of transition, and it became a profitable company, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. But Levick, at the time, was a crisis communications company. It was old school, and they said, in today's communication space, we have to be digital, and we need somebody who gets that. And so they recruited me, and I've been there for almost 2 years. And I think you're all here with the understanding that social media is a key part of communicating online now. But from a marketing and from a communication standpoint, what Levick does and our part at Levick Digital is to respond to crises, build brands to prevent crises, and essentially engage with users and stakeholders, whether those are anywhere from associations and their members, to corporations and their consumers, to political campaigns and their potential voters.
Hi, I'm Melissa Springer. I am Vice President of Client Strategy at Social Driver. We are a digital agency based here in the DC area, and we were recently named the 7th fastest growing agency in the country, first in the Mid-Atlantic, which we're really proud of. We run cross-channel social media campaigns. We also have an in-house development and design team, and we build websites, we build mobile applications. And from the social side, we really focus, I would say, on advocacy campaigns, helping promote issues on the Hill, making noise on social around specific issues. And then also membership drives for nonprofits, trade associations, things like that.
My name is Jeff Livingston. I'm the president and founder of Tenacity 5 Media. It is my 3rd digital media startup. I sold my first one, Livingston Communications, in 2009. Second one blew up, too many bloggers in a room. And third one, we're going to be closing our first year at the end of this month, and it's going pretty well. Went from me to 3, and looking forward to growing more. We do primarily content marketing, so we create what I like to call digital pieces of attraction that hopefully either generate leads or strengthen brands. And people still ask us periodically to manage their social media, and we do that. It's not really what I want to do. I kind of feel like it's, what's the right way to put it? A secondary business. I don't think it's really a long-term growth strategy right now. I think that's something that a lot of PR firms are picking up. But if somebody's going to pay me to do it, I'll do it. And then I would say the other thing I wanted to add was I'm an AU alum. I graduated here in '94, so there's hope or pray.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Kogan, and thank you all for coming out today. I'm a manager at Ward Circle Strategies, and we're a public affairs and policy shop, which in DC essentially means kind of whatever you need us to do, we'll help you do. I was brought on actually as full-time employee number 1. We're up at about 20 people now, 2 years later. And we do primarily, again, public affairs and communications work for the government and for nonprofit. I do a lot of the digital outreach and digital brand development and crisis communications. And we work with everybody from DoD and VA to 501c3 organizations. And I also kind of double dip, and I was one of the starting and founding writers at Mike.com. I was their DC brand guy until I came full-time to Ward Circle. And so I helped do a lot of the engagement with the White House and outreach and getting folks on the Hill to come write and contribute and engage with our users on social and help build that connection and that community for Mike and for other brands that we work with.
All right, thank you. And for the rest of this, we don't have to go right down the line. I'll just kind of open it up here and throw questions at you. So the first question, I guess, would be, is social media really that different or that cool or that effective? Are we making a big deal out of nothing, or in fact, is it, you know, something the media world has never seen before, and it's doing things that we never could have imagined? Jeff's nodding his head, so let's go with Jeff first.
I'm going to say it's overhyped. I think it's been around a long time. If you go back to AOL, CompuServe, and Prodigy, if you're a true internet geek, you know what I'm talking about, and it's been around for a long time. However, it is a huge media story because it's eating the media's lunch. So I think that a lot of the hype and a lot of the interest is generated by the media and perpetuated by the media because most of the reporters are losing their jobs because of it, or have to be deeply integrated into it in order to stay prescient and keep their jobs. I mean, how many times in the past year I've seen stories break because of interactions between people and journalists on Twitter and other networks like Reddit. It's just amazing. I would add that what social is becoming, at least from a corporate standpoint, is a customer relations channel, just like the phone used to be or email, and it's becoming a data driver to understand and better interact with customers. And from a content standpoint, that's my primary valuation of it, is to use it to really understand stakeholders very, very well, and to custom build things that are better fitted for people.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of Jeff here and say I think the way that people are using social media is really interesting to me and to my company, and the uses. I know you mentioned customer service. It's almost an instantaneous medium where in the past for customer service you would write a letter if you had a problem. Now you expect a tweet back from that company if you're tweeting at them within a minute or two, right? So I think that is one of the most fascinating parts of social media for me from a business perspective. There's hacks, there's ways that people are using the channels and the medium, and I think it's fascinating and surprising and exciting.
I wouldn't say I get the point that it's overhyped. It's almost like getting excited about the chip business, right? It's like Intel. They made the chip, they made it a little faster. What makes social media exciting is what we do with it. And it is the cause and solution to every crisis, or to many crises out there. It is what can make or break a career, a campaign. It is just so damn powerful that if we don't pay attention to it, it will be the end of, a company, a brand, an association, and hell, even a government for that matter. So it deserves the hype, but it's not just social media that deserves the hype, to Jeff's point. We shouldn't get excited about Facebook. We shouldn't get excited about Google Analytics. We should be excited about, who is hacking it and how are they hacking it. And to Jeff's point, when he talks about, it says so much about all of us and how we use it. The way Ralph Lauren looks at a brand versus the way, some association looks, when Ralph Lauren looks at its users and those that engage with it through the brand and how an association looks at it, you have these amazing tools out there that some of you might find scary, but they actually tell those groups a ton about you. And in theory, if they don't abuse it, can make social media and the web and the brand itself just an incredibly great experience for you. So just to sort of go back on that, it deserves some of the hype, but not as just a generic social media. There's some amazing tools. There's some stuff that Social Driver does. There's some stuff that, it's amazing how corporations get themselves out of a bind. I mean, it's what we do a lot of by shiny keys over here, like, oh no, don't look over there, look what we're doing over here. But they wouldn't be able to do that unless social media was there to help. So it's fundamental to the core of communication in the world we live in now.
I think just one point I want to add to that is that it's necessary. Whether you like it, whether you think it's transformative, whether you think it's annoying or a hindrance, you have to play ball and you have to understand how it works, because if you don't, you'll have what you've been working on for so long go down the drain if you did something incorrectly. I mean, if you look at the 2012 campaign, you had BuzzFeed Andrew, right? Andrew Kaczynski is a reporter for BuzzFeed, was a 26-year-old kid in Brooklyn who forced the Romney campaign to issue a formal response because he had the social media pull to start pushing out information and reach that critical mass to where people had started talking about it and it had shifted the tone of a campaign. You saw this with, you saw responses to critical events where a scheduled tweet goes off at the wrong second and all of a sudden a company has to walk it back and they have to start doing damage control because of a tweet that was innocent in and of itself, but because of the way the 24-hour news cycle has been impacted by the ubiquitous nature of social media, now they have to take that into consideration. One of the fights that I fight every single day working for my government clients is, as you build communications plans, it's convincing older folks that social media is a critical element of every communications plan you develop. And when they ask, well, why is that? Who cares about what people are tweeting? All I have to do is show them the stuff they don't even know exists out there about the discussions that are going on about their product that folks are ignoring. And so that ignorance is dangerous because it's not ignorance in the intellectual sense, but it's ignorance in a practical business sense. If you're missing the data that's out there, what people are saying about your product and your brand, you're doing yourself more harm than good. And so whether you like it or not, whether it's transformative or not, it's part of the alphabet of how to do media and how to conduct business today.
So, you all are students, and some of you are going to be going out in the work world sometime soon. So I just want to reiterate how these folks are different in case you were not completely paying attention when they gave their intros, and their intros were very short, so I understand. But Peter down there works for a big PR firm that they do crisis management. Mark here, by the way, is a AU Law School grad. I'm not sure you mentioned that. But does social
Go Eagles.
social media with government. He also worked at works at Policy Mike, now called Mike.com. And then the two folks in the middle there are working for Jeff with his own company, Melissa with a small company called Social Driver, and they have a lot of sort of small but then some sort of big clients. And I know at least Melissa has a lot of nonprofits as well. I don't know if Jeff does. But my question, kind of building off of that reintroduction, is can you guys give them more of a sense of kind of what you do every day in your shop and with social media? And feel free to define social media too. Some people would say, well, it's shouldn't really call it social media. It's really social marketing, or And are we really talking about Twitter, Facebook, and now is LinkedIn and Snapchat and part of it, or like what are we really talking about? But to maybe do all of that, maybe pick one story that Peter, a client in crisis management, where you save somebody through what you did with social media, and give them kind of more of a sense of what you do every day. I'll start with Peter.
Sure. I'll give you two, just because we are really trying to get away from being a PR firm, because the definition of a PR firm is someone who is sort of, hey, we pitched you, we got you on CNN, we put out some press releases, and no company sort of exists that way anymore. That's why we like to call ourselves communications, because we are marketing and PR and advertising have just blended into this soup of communications. And I'll use that as an example for, we work with, now we do a lot, like I said, crisis management. We tend to work before the crisis, during the crisis, and often after the crisis. So a lot of our clients we can't talk about. So I'll just say an oil company. And one of the things that they've done, like any major corporation, they have some screw-ups, and this isn't that oil company, by the way. Just want to be clear. It's not the two-letter one. But they are doing a lot to focus on rebuilding the coasts in Louisiana and Texas and places like that. Why? They have refineries on the coast, and without that coast, hurricanes tend to wipe out refineries. And they realize that, and every corporation does this, you have CSR initiatives and social responsibility, and they have to do something. And it's because all of you demand it. All of us demand. We all demand the fact that you are just not a good steward of this country if all you're looking at is your bottom line. You're all making, they're oil companies, making tons of money, but if they're not also giving back in some way. So how do we get that out from a communication standpoint? Old school is, we're going to get in the Wall Street Journal, you're going to do an event, and we'll have some TV people there, and we'll have a press release about it, and we'll issue some photos, and everyone's going to think you're great. Well, that is true. We do that too. And that would have worked 10, 15 years ago. But you guys, you're not looking at the news of Louisiana. You don't actually care about the press release. No one reads press releases anymore. They show up on SEO reports and things like that, and they make the client feel good because it was also published in like some far-off country that picked it up. And it's true. You'll put out a press release, and next thing you know, it's running in Nigeria, and you're like, I have no idea why it's running there, but that's 2 mentions. But they did, in this sort of bag of tricks, we're doing events, we're doing all the old school PR, getting all the right people there, getting the politicians there, getting all those sorts of things that have public affairs aspects. But we also produced a TV commercial, and we're doing a animation that runs in pre-roll form to talk about what this company is doing for these states to give back. And we've created a Facebook page where they had really shied away from social media because they're an oil company. And they've decided to avoid Twitter. Why? Because it's too, it just goes both ways. And with Facebook, they have a little bit more control over it. And because we are, to a large degree, as everyone sort of mentioned, they were very apprehensive of social media because they've just seen where it goes wrong. That's the things that they all talk about in boardroom meetings. They don't necessarily understand how it can all go right for them. So then you build out not just you have an SEO policy of, how do we make sure that when we do these things that they're helping out. We're building what we're calling a documentary website. It's very interactive. It's got video embed. It's HTML5, all these kinds of things. And you're building out, here are the things we're not doing. We're not doing Instagram. It's just not where their engagement is. We're not doing Snapchat. If it was a clothing brand, we would do that. And they all do CSR initiatives. But it's about an integrated marketing campaign, and that's why social marketing is a good way to put it. Because it's how do you get the word out there that they're doing these good things. Now, are they doing it so that you say, hey, we're going to go buy, I've got 2 gas station choices, and I've seen all the good things that these guys are doing, and I don't know what they're doing, so If I know for every gallon, and this is one of the things we're doing, that I buy 1 cent is going to protecting the oceans and protecting the coasts of the Gulf, you know what? I feel a little bit better about going to that gas station. The other example is in a crisis. We do a lot of recall work. Something goes wrong, and this is once again, if I describe the product, you'll be like, I remember that. But we had a major recall that we were working on, and so what do? You have to show, as a corporation, when you screw up, that you feel badly. And one of the ways you do that is you put a face on the company. So we got the CEO, we sat him in a room, a very humble room, not a lot of mahogany, not a lot of leather-bound books, and you had him essentially apologize and say, out of an abundance of caution, great phrase. You'll hear, just listen when CEOs apologize, out of an abundance of caution is used all the time. And out of an abundance of caution, they were recalling the product. Well, the fact that the government was getting ready to come down on them and make them recall it, a week later, if they didn't do something, is besides the point. You would never know that. But it's how do you get that on Facebook? How do you show that there's a human being behind this who really feels badly that you're dealing with this product that's affecting your life or may not be? Because in most situations when there's a crisis, it's like 0.02% of the population that is making them change their fundamental business model and how they act. And that's the downside of social media, right? You have one Domino's employee who does some crazy stuff to a pizza and puts it on YouTube, and next thing you know, the company has to change all of their employment contracts. So out of an abundance of caution, we as a firm use social media to protect, to prevent, and to fix. And so whether it's a recall or it's just a company that wants to show that they're giving back, you have to use, as part of the solution, social media. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
I speak to an example as well, and right now what I'm working on is I'm involved in the DoD's response to the Ebola crisis. And when we're talking about really a 0.02% impacting a nation, I mean, more people have married Kim Kardashian and Britney Spears than have died from Ebola in the United States. I could tell you that last week, 1,000 people died from the flu, and we don't have an epidemic. But perception becomes reality, and the unique thing about social media is it has a way of really warping perception because people who are loud on social media get magnified exponentially. And so part of this comes back to a very basic communications concept, which is words matter. And the words you use and when you use them and how you use them influences kind of the narrative that is drawn. So an example I'll give is, I don't know if any of you have read it, but over the weekend, the Pentagon and the White House announced that there's going to be a 30-person team that is all military that can go move around the country as requested by Health and Human Services to help out with Ebola should it show up anywhere else. God forbid, hopefully it won't. There is a old law from the 18th century known as Posse Comitatus that says, the military and law enforcement actions, basically the military cannot run around the United States doing what it wants to its citizens. Great law, good idea, nobody's arguing with that. There is a very vocal segment of certain conservative and libertarian ideologies on social media that are very concerned about anything the government might be doing when it comes to deploying assets domestically. And so being able to kind of proactively engage, and a lot of this is that the grunt work of communications and thinking through what are the questions going to be, what are the concerns going to be, and how do we push that message out, not just traditionally putting things up, you can I'm sure all of you have heard of the lovely website health.mil, the Center for All Military Healthcare, right? A couple hundred people might visit it, umpteen thousands might visit it. In reality, it's not going to inform the public, but CNN will, right? Breitbart will. MSNBC will. And so part of that is getting those validators to engage with you and to talk about what you're talking about in the way that you want to talk about it. And so kind of working through that language preemptively, pushing out that information preemptively, helps you mitigate some of the panic that'll occur around certain crises, particularly in a national public health scare like Ebola. That's just one example of how you have to think about it, again, more from a crisis communications perspective.
I think we're a little different. And what I'll say is I think we're kind of like the scrappy guy in the block. We're a small digital agency. I call us flat, fast, and fun. And that means that our team is like a SWAT team. We go in and we solve problems. And those problems are typically related to a company's business goals, right? It might be, I need to increase my membership. It might be, I want some noise on this specific issue on the Hill, and we can help with that. But everything from our perspective is in support of a strategic business goal. And I'll give an example. One of the companies that we work with is Honda North America. And they were the first global automaker to engage with, from a government relations perspective. We work with their government relations office. And a big win for them was when the Secretary of Commerce tweeted at Honda North America congratulating them on becoming a net exporter. And a net exporter means that they export more cars than they import. So all the cars that they're producing, I think it's like 98% of the cars that they're producing in America are exported, which is fantastic. And that was a really big win. If you follow members of Congress on Twitter, they don't typically retweet or mention or engage with anyone. So I think for us, being able to tell that story and get our clients those types of wins can be really impactful and help them support their business goals.
We just wrapped up a project last week for what is now called Cision. And what Cision is a technology company which merged Vocus and Cision. And it's about a $500 million a year PR software, maybe a little more, entity. And they wanted to get some goodwill out there and also generate some new leads. They have a little bit of a reputation for spamming people. And the older regimes before the current and my client took over the company. But I had also worked for the older guys too, and they were great too. But geez, is this going on Twitter? Anyway, so
Yes,
Not
he's
that
nodding
one,
his
not
head
this
yes.
one.
one of the things that you'll find in most sectors is that the trade press and the regular press are, one, shrunk to a significant minority of the overall voice share, and two, they don't really care about companies. So in order to get a news story broken, more often than not, you have to get it validated online, or you have to make like some huge acquisition or big splash. So we decided to completely circumvent them, and we hired Brian Solis, who's a pretty well-known blogger and a friend of mine, and also Gaping Void, and we spent about $35,000 on a piece of content. We posted it on SlideShare as an ebook. It was a little different than your usual white paper. There's a lot of content shock out there. There's a lot of people posting blogs. There's a lot of people with white papers. All this stuff's noise for the most part. People are sick of seeing that junk, so you have to stand out. Highly visual piece of content. You have to have visual media today. We put it on SlideShare. We ungated it, so there was no necessary form to get into it. And then we socialized it. And we socialized it through influencers, bloggers, our own content channels. We used some native advertising. We targeted specific media, LinkedIn, because of its professional interests, and obviously this is a professional example. What's the future of PR kind of a thing. We did some stuff on Facebook, because they actually have an active Facebook presence, which shocks me. I don't believe like anybody in their right mind wants to talk business on Facebook, but some people do, I guess. And Twitter, because it's pretty easy to target and get really, really precise with Twitter. Love that for native advertising. And we also had a user-generated content campaign using a new tool called Canva, which allows people to take pictures, either ones they upload or stock images, and post their own little sayings on it and get people to sound off of what they think the future of PR is. So net, we're over 115,000 views on LinkedIn, which is, views are a vanity metric, but I'm just going to say when you consider PR Week's distribution of like 30,000, we just totally crushed that and threw it away. Yes. But more importantly, we also did have an optional sign-up form, and we generated about 1,000 leads, new leads, which is significant. If they just close 10% of that, that's $1 million worth of business. If they close 4 of those, they've paid for this. So, and we also did, I should note that live events are a critical part of social, in my opinion. If you look at where all the TV dollars are going right now, it's into content that's live. Sports right now is going crazy because it's just about the only thing that you can put online other than like an award show that happens, and when it's done, everybody knows about it, and it's ruined, right? Like, I'm a big Walking Dead fan. I still don't know what happened this week, and don't you dare tell me, because I am going to download it probably tonight and watch it, right? I mean, we're moving to a download era. But when you have live events, professional events, events like the one we're having right now, which is probably getting tweeted, man, that creates a little wave. That's a huge social interaction. People want to be a part of that. They want to see the pictures. They want to talk about it. I mean, if you have a favorite show, I'm sure you try to tune out on Twitter and Facebook so you don't see all that stuff happening and you don't get the spoilers. So when you can create a live moment, it's a great way to promote something. And we created a live moment to help extend the book. We got Brian Solis. We booked Google headquarters, which is the result of having a significant ad spend with Google. And we had an event right there down the street from the T-Rex, and with all the red and yellow and green and blue. It's kind of cool. It's like my fourth trip to Google, but if you've never been, definitely go. It's like going to like an Asimovian, futuristic, strange place. And that rocked it on Twitter. Just absolutely crushed it. And one of the things that we did too, and I'll shut up, I know I'm babbling, we commandeered the Future of PR hashtag, which was not the company's hashtag, but it is now.
So Jeff actually did a little bit at the end of his answer there for my next question. So maybe we should actually be really, really specific and talk about exactly which social media platforms we're talking about here. Like, if you go to a typical website, there's always a Facebook icon, there's always a Twitter icon, and usually there's a third. Sometimes it's YouTube, sometimes it's LinkedIn. Obviously, Instagram sneaking into the conversation, Snapchat. I don't know if Google Plus is really making it or not. You guys tell me. So again, Jeff kind of talked about it, and I know the answer is it depends. But which ones? I don't know. Maybe rank them in order of like we always have to start with Facebook and Twitter, and then the rest are maybe nice to haves, or I don't know. And obviously, it depends. But if you can just touch on that a little bit, Peter.
Can I give you a little bit of it depends to start it out? Yeah. Which is if you at least bifurcate it from B2C to B2B. From B2C, I think business to consumer is you always have those top three, which is Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Because if you're a brand and you're afraid, like I was saying with the oil company, like they were too afraid for the specific CSR initiative to get on Twitter, you should be a little concerned about why that is. But from a B2B standpoint, which essentially means you're a company, you're a manufacturer, and you're just trying to appeal to a procurement officer, then all of a sudden LinkedIn plays a much bigger role. Then when you get to the periphery on B2C, then you get Snapchat, and they're starting to do some advertising, and you get Instagram, which can be highly engaging. And honestly, I use Instagram more than I use Facebook or anything like that. I just am a visual person. I'd much rather, with the occasional link sharing or political rant, like Facebook is, I just don't use it that much. Twitter is more self-promotional, and I'm using this as an individual, but when you look at brands, it's fairly reflective. But Instagram, you can actually engage. I mean, when you're showing pictures and like what a brand did today, or who they helped, or their new product line, or things like that, people love Instagram. But for a B2B statement, I think you really drop off pretty quickly after LinkedIn. And then Twitter's there, but then, I mean, if you're selling widgets, you're not going to win any clients off of Facebook.
I think this is the beauty of data, because data will tell you where to go, right? And so if I was marketing to people like you, data would tell me right off the bat that I don't want to be on Facebook and I don't want to be on Twitter, that I probably want to be on Instagram, Vine, I want to be on Snapchat, I may want to be on Pinterest, I may not, depending on which part of the country I'm in. I mean, and these are guesses, right? So you can only throw the guess out there, and you would better have analytics code, and you better see where they're coming. And you know what? You could get a ton of traffic from some of these networks, and it's crap. it's crap traffic. I get a ton of traffic from Facebook. It's crap. Nobody does what I want them to on my website when they come in from Facebook. So I don't waste my time marketing my business on Facebook anymore. You know, I could get a lot of attention, but attention isn't necessarily business, right? And so I think it's really important. Like we have a professional photographer that's one of our clients, right? And you're going to be surprised what the top 2 social networks are for that one. Anybody want to guess? Throw it out there. Wrong. Instagram's great for like selfie pics. It's not really good for professional stuff. I mean, Pinterest? No.
What about 500?
Boom. There's one. 500 pixels. Anybody hear that? So this is
It's
the.
actually a really cool site.
It's a really great photography site, and a lot of professional fashion and art designers and graphic designers are using it. So if that's your customer, right, be there. Like the other thing is the other one's Flickr. It's a beast. Flickr is a beast, man. I think like it's the most underappreciated social network out there. If you want to get any kind of an image or story sourced based on your image or be found, you better have it up on Flickr, and you better tag the bejesus out of it. Because I'll tell you what, as soon as you put it up there, guess who's indexing it? Google and Yahoo, man. It's all over the place. Man, those two are all over Flickr. It's primary source of images. So again, it really gets back to what you're trying to do and how you're trying to achieve it. Like if I was trying to break news and like leak stuff, I'd be on Reddit. You know? I mean, so again, it really gets back to purpose and data.
So it depends. Is what you're
It depends.
Yeah, no, I'll echo what what Jeff said as well. I mean, I think it's less about the channel and more about the people that are using the channel. So if you think about where we've seen a lot of success is teachers are on Facebook primarily. You know, if you're trying to reach teachers, you're going to be on Facebook. And if you're trying to reach Hill staffers, probably going to Twitter. I think Google Plus is interesting. It's one of those networks that, yeah, I'm not sure it's going to make it either, but I know that it's important for my search results, so I'm posting there.
Yeah, that's a critical piece for everybody to understand about Google Plus is because it's integrated with Google, it does impact on where your page pops up when people search for you. So if there's one piece of advice I could give to all of you is know somebody at Google who you can ask questions about how Google works. Because seriously, it will impact kind of what you do and how you do it. The cheatfrommike.com, back when they were still Policy Mike and still trying to kind of claw their way into the traffic game, is if you share a news story and somebody can Google it, but you also post it to Google Plus, over time, if it hits certain metrics for plus ones, which you can obviously manipulate, it'll start showing up higher in the Google News site section of the site. So know how Google works, both for analytics and Google in general, because it's such a massive driver of traffic. Very little competes with it. And I also want to foot stomp the importance of Reddit, that I think with, you know, if you want to read news that hasn't been broken yet, go to Reddit. If you want to read snarky commentary on it, go to Gawker and BuzzFeed. If you want to hear about the story a week after it's actually broken, then you can go on to the major networks. Any funny video you see on CNN was on Reddit a week ago. But understanding the limitations of a site like that, right, you can't make something go viral. There is certainly a science to it. You can definitely up your odds. But people engage over what people want to engage on. And just having a more intimate understanding of the nature of engagement. And to the point on analytics, yeah, view counts are fluff. They make the client really happy, and you can tell them, oh, there were X million impressions, which is another great buzzword that means nothing. Your key metrics are usually engagement and yield, right? How many people actually clicked on what you posted, and then how many people went on to do what you wanted them to do in the site that they went to. Those numbers are always much smaller than your total view count, and that's actually where true results come from. Because as Jeff cited, you know, if his yield rate had been 4 clients precision, they would have already paid for the comms contract. Everything else on top of that was just gravy. So I think part of, you know, to echo the answer previously, it depends. But what makes the decision correct is a deep understanding of the network and of its audience and how that audience engages. Because the mom taking a healthcare organization's Facebook post about a healthy recipe for dinner and sharing it on Pinterest is very different than a political activist on Reddit politics taking something to Twitter, right? You have to understand how those chains work before you can start wanting to manipulate them or influence them.
Can I add one thing to that? Because when you brought up the moms, it made me think about from a communication standpoint, it is often not even social media. It is, finding the networks, finding where that engagement is most likely to happen may not be on social media at all. So and moms are just the easiest one to use, especially when you talk about dealing with product companies and product recalls and things like that. When you're going to the bloggers and these blog networks, that just the commentary alone, and it's the power of Reddit, right? It's just it's a back and forth discussion. And if you can engage that way and be transparent, I mean, there's probably an hour conversation about how a brand should act online, but going beyond social media is the key to success for a campaign or something like that.
So actually, building on that, so these are students, and they might be out in some people might be freshmen or sophomores here, but at some point they'll have summer jobs and be in the working world soon enough. And so just, you all mentioned it, but I just want to maybe reinforce it that social media, A, might be better labeled social marketing, but then B, it's not an island unto itself. It's part of a larger package. So if you could, each of you, give us an example of that larger package. Imagine sitting across the conference room table and passing over a proposal to a client that includes all sorts of weapons in the arsenal, and what might those weapons be?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about maybe an integrated campaign. One that we're working right now is around trade, and trade is a really complex issue, right? It's hard to understand. There are a lot of bills around it, TPP, TPA. No one knows what those mean. They're not in plain language. So when we think about what an integrated campaign looks like that goes beyond social media, right? First, we start with the strategy and the messaging and figuring out what the goal of that campaign is, and say it's to just make some noise in the space that's pro-trade. We're going to do a lot of research first. We're going to get on the ground and look at the data. Then we're probably going to launch a microsite, a website, and collect data on people that are coming to that website. Maybe we'll soft launch it and then actually start driving people to that site. There will be a lot of offline strategies that are supporting that integrated campaign. So think a government relations team that's up on the Hill talking to people about what you're doing around trade. Business chambers of commerce. Think of other partners that might be helping you to get that message across, coalitions. And then we'll actually start driving traffic and integrate and talking with people. One of the good examples I think around that's so critical is keyword analytics, and people just don't think of it, that most of America spells the word donut, D-O-N-U-T, right? If you were gonna spell it correctly, you're spelling it D-O-U-G-H-N-U-T. It is invisible. Nobody is searching for that online. You are literally invisible. And so the words you use are very important. And I liken it to kind of a cocktail party, right? You could do a lot of work to create your own cocktail party, invite all these people, talk to them, or you could go to someone else's cocktail party, right? And you could talk to just as many people, and it's half the amount of work, right? So you're gonna wanna, from a social perspective, from my perspective, we try to join conversations that are already happening. We're not creating the conversation, we're joining the conversation, and we're participating in a way that makes sense for a business and for a brand. And I think the role of businesses and brands in social media is really interesting. I don't know if anyone's seen the John Oliver last week tonight. I don't know if anyone saw that, but he really came down hard on businesses around the DiGiorno tweet. They got involved in a domestic violence hashtag and they didn't realize, right? It was why I stayed, and DiGiorno tweeted out why I stayed for the pizza or something really inappropriate, right? They got a lot of slack for it. And it really speaks a lot to the role that businesses should and can play in social media. And I mean, from my perspective, the integrated piece of a campaign is really connecting with people, engaging with people in real and meaningful ways, because behind the phone, behind the computer is a person, right?
If I may, I know our firm loves when people like DiGiorno do stuff like that, because they normally call us next. But this is going to be overgeneralization, but from the silos of which we sort of pull from whenever it's an integrated campaign. And we're a weird firm, especially since I've joined, because we are a marketing department for one company, we're a crisis team for another, and everything in between. We really are an integrated communications company now. But when someone comes to us, often it's a corporation that can't always just join the conversation. Because if you are, and once again, they're not the client that I was talking about earlier, but let's say you're BP and you just want to join the environmental conversation, like it's not going to go well. So you have to create your own context around it. So what that typically means is that we're going to look at content, and it's going to be video. Where does it play a part? And is that a commercial? Is it an animation? Is it interviews? Is it testimonials? All that sorts of things. We'll look at social, what we looked at before, what we talked about before. What's the right place to be having that conversation? What's going to make the greatest impact? Where do we have to, actually engage? To the earlier point, you do Google Plus, because if you do YouTube and Google Plus and just have some basic SEO, like you are helping yourself out tremendously. But there's also the content standpoint of bloggers and outreach that's more in line with traditional. So you just start going down the list of what makes sense for the client. And then you also have to remember the old school stuff. One of the things you will always talk about, and this is like a greater issue of social media, is the rules of marketing haven't changed that much. Like people love to be like, the rules of marketing are changing, but it's still about engagement. It's still about how do I connect with you? How do I make you want to believe me, buy from me, vote for me, all of those things. So you have to be real, you have to be authentic, you have to be transparent, especially when you're coming from a corporate standpoint. All of you are going to be looking for a job at some point. Most of you are not going to be the ones that they put in charge of the campaigns. So what you need to do is go out and learn those skill sets. I can tell you right now from a hiring perspective, people that understand a lot of the nuances of what we're talking about, like why analytics is important. Not like, hey, you can put together a Facebook page, great. How many Facebook pages do you have friends of that it's like, Randy's barbecue this weekend? Like they created a Facebook page, good for you, but I'm not gonna hire you because you created Randy's barbecue page. But if you can understand Google Analytics and how that is going to factor into engagement and reaching out to these people, those are the skill sets that you guys need to pick up that are going to make you marketable, because you'd be shocked how many people's resumes come across my desk that they don't get that. And I have an MBA. Personally, I went down the business route and then somehow got into communications. But it is the whole reason that we are all being hired by these companies is for the bottom line. And if you can translate that from everything you guys learn in these classes to you want to drive sales, you want to drive business, you need to understand that we're going to YouTube to put some really engaging content on there because it's going to translate to traffic and signups and whatever it is. That's how you get involved, and you need to know that's how you get hired. And you need to know how many of those different tools are out there, because what makes our jobs hard is because you guys, I'm blaming you, are fickle. And you change social networks every 2 years, or you find one thing that's engaging now and you hate it. And Google Plus was going to be the greatest thing, and then all of a sudden just died on the vine right away. Speaking of Vine. And so, and I kind of switched this in an HR conversation. I didn't mean to do that, but having been in the chairs that you guys are in, make sure you get those skill sets. Don't sit in these classes and just get the strategy, because you might be 10 years away from coming up with the strategies. Make sure you go and get the technical skills, because the stuff that we bleed is reliant upon you guys. I have a team of 10 you guys because everything's changing so quickly that I need you guys to come in and do it for me. So I can list all the things, but there's probably 5-10 things I'm forgetting that if I had my team here, they'd be like, yeah, Peter, what about this, this, and this? So you get paid really well for knowing all those little technical things.
Yeah, I think what I would want to emphasize there is that, when I started my firm, we didn't do great in digital because I'm some digital virtuoso. We did really well because my boss understands communications and everything that goes into that. And digital and social media is just another tool, as Tom mentioned, that skill set is translated into. So as you develop those skills, I know integration's kind of one of those hot words that can mean nothing, but think about it from the approach of when every single thing you're doing, think about how it relates to everything else. Our firm just hired another social digital person. I'm an attorney, she's an attorney. We're not hiring lawyers because lawyers can't find jobs. We're hiring lawyers because they approach information from a completely different point of view, and they process information differently, and they present information differently. And does that mean that social is all they can do? No. But if they're good at social and they come with a different perspective and a different skill set, that's tremendous value. And so to Tom's question, when you're talking about what do you present a client with, it has to come with everything. To the first question I answered, social is an integral part of that. You can't do it without social anymore, but you also can't do it with just social. And if all you bring to the table is social, you're going to find yourself losing to people who understand everything else and just happen to be good at social, right? So as you kind of look at communications and business, be sure you understand the skills and the strategy and the nuance of it. But when you're talking about it, and you can practice it, talk to your family, try and explain it. Talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents, that's always a good challenge. But explain why it's important and how acting in that space influences all other spaces.
So if I wanted to be CMO, and that's really like the way I would look at it when I was your age, because I was cocky enough to think that I'd be CMO of Oracle someday or whatever. If I wanted to be CMO, I would tell you that there are two things you have to understand. There are paths and there are levers. And in marketing, paths are what analytics show you, paths to your customer, paths to actions. And in today's world with corporations and increasingly with nonprofits and governments, we're seeing marketing automation systems become cheaper and cheaper and more accessible, which means that you can understand every single aspect of your customer behavior if you have the right analytics, and that means you can build the right paths. And then levers are creativity, which is classic old school Wanamaker, Ogilvy, Mad Men marketing, right? Because I don't care how damn good your creative is. I don't care if you understand what the right message is. If you're boring, you're not going to lever anything. And in that sense, there's still beauty and there's still opportunity and there's still a chance that you could deliver stuff that's just going to compel the bejesus out of people. Like when you look at that thing I told you about, that Vocus PR future thing, I mean, we have little monsters, like little illustrated monsters all over that thing, like squiggle, nothing professional, you know, like it's something that maybe, you know, your 7 or 8 year old would love, or your like cousin, you know, but it worked. It compelled people. It gave them something emotional to tie to. And if you're creative, there is an opportunity for you to be awesome and to really, really drive excellence. When I look at Jobs, Steve Jobs, and there will only be one Steve Jobs. Let's be clear. Nobody here can be Steve Jobs. I cannot be Steve Jobs. And probably our families are very grateful that we're not Steve Jobs, right? Because he wasn't really a great guy. But he was brilliant.
He wasn't, right?
He was not.
Yeah, no, he was.
He was brilliant, though, from a creative standpoint. He really got creativity. He also understood paths. He understood data. So you have to understand one of those two things. You have to understand your levers, and then you have to excel at the other. So understand levers and excel at paths, or understand paths and excel at levers, right? Yeah. Right. I don't know. I'm kind of stumbling on myself, but you get my point. Be either creative or analytical and understand the other well enough so that you don't ignore it. When I look at failed marketing, and believe me when I tell you this, 85 to 90% of marketing, I don't care what medium, social, PR, advertising, email, 85% of it is because one of those two things was ignored.
Okay, so one more question before we open it up to these guys. So this is sort of the sensationalist TMZ sort of part of our program here, right? All right, so I know Peter talked about triple bottom line and CSR, and actually that's one of the classes that I teach. And also in one of our classes, we talked about, and this is sort of the portion where you tell us sort of the deep dark secrets of your trade that maybe these guys will walk out of here and go, did you hear? Did you, this is what they'll be tweeting about. So
It was nice talking to you.
So one thing we talked about in one of our classes was Yelp, and if anybody Googles Yelp and they see some of the deceiving things they did, where they would call up Joe's Pizza Parlor in San Francisco and say, hey, there's a lot of negative. And by the way, I'm not sure this is technically social media, but it's close enough.
It is.
Okay, so you have a lot of negative reviews of your restaurant on Yelp. Hey, we can take care of that for you if you buy advertising on Yelp. And then the guys that don't buy advertising on Yelp all of a sudden get way more negative stuff mysteriously on their Yelp page. And it's pretty shocking when my students were very surprised that this sort of stuff happens. So maybe tell us some of the, don't include yourself in the story. I don't want to incriminate anybody here, but just some of the things that might surprise our young students here.
I always
Next
go first,
question.
yeah.
Sure, fine. So examples like that absolutely exist. I don't think that any communications firm or kind of communications in general exists in order to, create problems that they then go fix. That's mostly for the movies and TV shows. But in the sense of going back to what I had said earlier about perception becoming reality, a lot of communications is playing with perception. And that includes getting results for your client by changing perception rather than changing reality. I mean, that's what a good PR firm can do, is make it so that what people think is different without anything actually being different. If you want to look at that in action, watch politicians who stay in office for 30 years, right? I mean, it's a science, it's an art. There are ways to influence a narrative. There are ways to pay writers. There are ways to call in favors. There are ways to peddle access to people. And all of that exists, and you all know about that. And I think rather than claiming there's some deep, dark underbelly that manipulates everything, I think just understanding that there are two sides to it always, and to kind of, this isn't a new idea. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, long time ago said, everything is perspective, nothing is the truth, right? And so it's all about what people think, and there are ways to influence how people think.
I think one of the most surprising things for me from a communications and a social media perspective is just how much data there is on individuals, whether B2B or B2C. Facebook advertising is fascinating to me. I think they just came out, I think it was last year, they came out with something called lookalike advertising. And you can upload an email list of your customers, and Facebook will find people who are likely to behave in similar ways using data that does not just come from Facebook. And it has, I would say, a 60% conversion rate. It's pretty high. It's pretty accurate. It's kind of terrifying. I'm a marketer, and I think it's a little terrifying. But I also think, the more data that people have on you, the more custom and tailored the messages and the information you're going to be getting is. So that was one of the most surprising things this year for me from social.
If I may.
Please.
So I was doing this, what we call social fundraiser, right? Usual campaign type of a thing online to use social media to drive, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a cause that shall remain unnamed. And we got a very influential blogger to help participate in it. And this is kind of my general experience with influencers, is what you see online is far from what you get. And there's the tip of the iceberg, and it is much fairer than what's underneath the water. And anyway, so this person has a lot of books out there, and we got Journey to donate autographed T-shirts, which if you're old like me, that's pretty cool, right? And most donors are old. So we decided to value, if somebody gave $1,000, that they would get the Journey T-shirt. And we're explaining this to ex-influencer, and ex-influencer says, I'm sorry, but I'm bigger than Journey. Right?
Is he involved in the wine business, maybe?
It could be a she, man. I'm not saying. Okay? I'm bigger than Journey, and my book should be X thousand. And meanwhile, we're like, of course, DMing and like chatting on the back channel, like, holy shit, did he say that? Really? I guess you just got it. But did they really say that? And then we're like texting each other, "Don't stop believing." You know? And I've had so many experiences like that. It's unbelievable. I have to deal with influencers all the time. And the other one that I would say, which was interesting, is I know that the crisis people in the room are going to be maybe a little mortified, but I had a client get into it with Glenn Beck, which is like your worst nightmare, right? Because then you get all the right-wing psychos going on you, unless you're of that belief. And anyway, long story short, my client's freaking out, and I'm looking at their follower counts just start to jack up, and they were complaining about how little engagement they were getting and how small their follower count is. I'm like, so these people are following you, right? You know, are they like, good followers, or are they like the right-wing guys giving you grief? And they're like, no, they're good followers. I'm like, well, keep going at them then. They're like, what? I said, keep messing with Glenn. And they did it for like a week, and man, they literally quintupled their following. And we intentionally baited this guy, and it was an argument about the founding fathers. And anyway, long story short, they built their following, and they were engaged people, and they loved it. And then when they retired, we literally tweeted at Glenn Beck, and we said, "Hey, thanks for all the new followers, Glenn." And that was the last we heard of him. That was fun.
I just have I want to throw out names and see how you react to the influencer thing. I can just think of those who have the massive egos who would say that. I'm thinking of more just like an interesting story that would be somewhat captivating. We do a lot of crisis work. For FARA rules, I can tell you about one of them because you just have to Google us and you'll see it. We have represented the country of Nigeria. And it, with any country, political divisions take place. And when you're being hired by a government, there's usually a government or a group that is anti that government. And we deal with a lot of brands. We had a recall earlier this year of a product that many of you have probably worn, might be wearing now, not that particular product, but because it was recalled, but where the CEO, in our opinion, just made some terrible missteps. We would give him a lot of them around social media because they didn't want it to get out more. And you have to, an expression we, besides out of an abundance of caution, the other one we use a lot is run to the light. And you have to, as a CEO and the head of a business, be honest. And when you screw up, run to the light and say, we screwed up. And that applies to countries and governments as well. But with countries and governments, no matter what you say, the opposition is going to come after you. And so just for the sake of having a fun story to tell you, there is a reason why you cannot access the 4th floor of 1900 M Street, which is where we are located. And it's because it got out that we were helping the government of Nigeria with the Bring the Girls Back Home campaign. And there was a lot of people in the opposition party that felt that they either should have hired internally, but they shouldn't have hired a DC firm. And governments pay well. And once again, these are all things you can find on Google, how much we got paid, when, what happened. And one day, I don't think it was the president, but one of his ministers said something that was poorly worded. And all hell broke loose. I mean, all hell broke loose. We started blood money, was often on our Twitter stream. We were getting, I was traveling at one point and I was looking at the Google Analytics on my phone, and we are a primarily US-based firm, and we had something like 10,000 visitors from Nigeria and like 300 from America. And you're like, this is not good because those are definitely not clients. And so all of a sudden we became the crisis because of our client. And we had people that were threatening the lives of our employees because my picture, email address, phone number is on there. Our CEO's followers on Twitter went up a tremendous amount, and he couldn't understand why. He all of a sudden started getting a ton of LinkedIn requests. Nigeria is a very digitally savvy country. And when they are angry, they typically go to social media. And they took it out on us and it was right before we had the summit of African leaders. And so we had people that were literally scoping out our office. So to this day, you cannot get to our floors. We have 2 floors in that building because of so many overt threats that we then had to use our own business intelligence and social media scanning and deep dive to figure out where these people were and what have they said in the past and do they have records. And so being in this space is not always just let's go find a blogger and put out a press release. Sometimes it can get really real. And if it weren't for the fact that I came home and my wife would and I'm thinking like, holy shit, what is going on? I mean, it was just crazy what was going and being said about us online. She was like, when you get through this is going to be a story you tell someday. And I think this might be the first time I'm actually telling it. But it is, it can be, communications can actually be a crazy business sometimes. And the one little quick anecdote I will tell you is that when I first got into this space, it was roughly around the time Scandal came out. A show I did not watch, which is what makes this interesting, because I was down at South by Southwest and I said, I do crisis management. And they go, you do you're like Scandal. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I kind of am. And the one girl next like, you kill people? And I was like, I really should watch that show. So it's kind of a mix of Mad Men and Scandal here when you do communications in DC. But I definitely consider it for a career.
So Peter, I really thought you were going to tell us that you are the agency that actually creates those Nigerian emails. I thought you were going to break it here.
While we were waiting to get paid, there were a few jokes around the office about, if we only send them $10,000, then they'll send us the money.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a question from one of my students, AJ.
So back in 2007, 2008, MySpace was one of the leading social media, networks. Now it's a distant fade. Do you think any current social media is on the same track as MySpace, or do you think it's going to growth even more?
I think Twitter's in trouble. I really do. I think Twitter's losing a lot of engagement, and they're getting new followers as quickly as they're losing them. And there's just so, I don't know what the best way to put it is. If you look at department stores, I know that's kind of a crazy metaphor, but if you look at department stores in the mid-1940s and 1950s, they try to be everything to all people. And that's what Twitter and Facebook try to be. And as soon as you had malls and then the internet, those stores got carved up by little niche outlets. And what we're seeing right now is niche types of social media like Snapchat, because I don't ever want anybody to see what I'm posting, right? And Pinterest, because I don't really want to deal with a lot of conversation, but I want to look at cool things and share cool things and that kind of thing. And LinkedIn, professional, you're seeing like little niches develop. So there's only so much room for interstates. And I think Facebook's done a really, really good job, in spite of itself and its privacy issues, of remaining prescient. Twitter is struggling.
I would say I actually worry about Facebook as a social media outlet, and I don't worry about Facebook as a company, because they've done a great job of acquiring companies and diversifying. They still do, to Melissa's point, I remember once we had some of the guys from the Facebook office in DC show us the back end of all of the data they have on all of us, and it is terrifying. I mean, they put and I remember someone on our team picked up their phone, they're like, no cameras, please. But it's so terrifying, they don't want you to know how terrifying it is. So when they have that much data, but we live in Facebook's world, right? It's not like the good old days 6 months ago where you could say no, I just want to see the most recent posts. They're like, no, this is what you're seeing and you're going to like it. And you have these platforms like LO that's out that there's going to be more. I don't believe, and this is recorded, so I might be a buffoon here and I could be totally wrong, but that LO and some of those are going to survive, because when they're thinking that you will pay money to have additional features, like I can change the color. And Facebook, even though they may control it, it's free. But I do think, to Jeff's point, there are going to be people that steal away. And Instagram's a perfect example, but Facebook owns them. So it's Facebook is never going to go away, but it's to the point of 3 years ago, all these brands were running to Facebook. And then we all woke up, and one of you said it earlier, it's do you really want to engage with Levick on Facebook? Not really. I mean, only if you want a job there, you think you might get a hold of one of us. But So I think you're going to see some people drop off. Google Plus, I mean, who knows? It does have some amazing benefits for for SEO, but how many of you are actually spending time on there? Even to the point, haven't they broken off Hangouts now onto its own to where you can just use Hangouts? So it's like even the one thing that people used to say, oh, I go to Google Plus because I use Hangouts, they've pulled it off of that. So I'd be interested. There are some really cool social media platforms out there. For example, now I'm blanking on it, but it's House, that's what it is. Most of you guys are not buying homes or adding additions and things like that, but there is a phenomenally well-built social media platform out there called House that is just for interior designers, home builders, and their clients. And it is, I can tell you because we're the marketing department for Case remodeling here in town. It's weird how we did that, I don't know. But my point is that people spend hours and hours, and that's what's going to keep popping up, is things that just pull away from Facebook, but it's not going anywhere.
So let's not, we don't have to have every single person answer every single question. So let's actually go to Twitter here. We actually have a question on Twitter. Question for Melissa. How do you and Social Driver get the buy-in of executives and business owners who aren't on social or don't really see the value?
It's a really good question. A lot of executives don't see the value in social, and one of the first things we do is, and I think you may have mentioned this earlier, is pull up their company or pull up their name, and there is information about their organization on social media, and they are completely unaware of it. And so first off, explaining to them how they can access that information is really critical, and see what people are actually saying about their company, about the people in their company. And then I think there's a really powerful story around putting a face on a company, right? So having brand ambassadors and having people within your company and your organization. A company is like a 300, 400 person organization, right? But if maybe there's a senior leadership team that's tweeting out and engaging with reporters or providing articles and engaging with people who consume their products, that can be a really powerful story that impacts the C-level and their goals.
Any other questions out there in real life? The physical world.
I also tweeted it, so.
There's so many of them I couldn't find it.
Hi, I'm an MBA student. I am actually focusing on business intelligence, and I have a background with social media, doing social media. So I have a question on how your firms are utilizing business intelligence tools, and if you are outsourcing or bringing that in-house, and what type of analytics or BI tools are you using in regards to social media?
I'll be quick. We have a whole BI team, and these are former like DoD guys. Like what we are using BI for is often what are called corporate campaigns. So there are, I mean, not to sound scary, but there are large secret organizations out there that are trying to bring down companies. And they're doing so in very slow moving ways, turning unions against companies, turning people against unions. They are trying to, they are well funded, and often they are not, you'll have the union coming after you and you think, oh, this is about wages, but then so they'll squash that and then something else pops up and something else pops up, and it's only later that they find out that there was another entity actually funding this. So we have deep BI, which I guess is one way to put it, which is guys who are doing a lot of foreign national stuff. They're looking into what's going on in the dark web and things like that. We then have business intelligence from just the standpoint of monitoring. We have our own homegrown overlay of a few different tools. We used to be back in the day like Radian 6 would be the big tool, and I think it's just a beast that's overpriced. But there's some great tools out there like we use BrandWatch, and we have a couple small companies that we actually lay their services over that, which will go through a mailing list of, say, 5,000 people and figure out where they are on social media, what they're talking about, and how you can influence them. So there's tons of amazing, really cool tools, and some of them are actually even free until you really want to start using them. Like heavy using.
We have 8 minutes left, and I did actually have one more question, and I think these guys might be very interested in this, so I want to make sure we get it in before we run out of time, because there's actually another event that comes in here right after us.
Can we eat their food?
We're going to eat that before we leave. So Peter actually mentioned it a little bit about this earlier on, the types of skills you need to have, these folks need to have. When I was growing up, it was really cool. I would always want to be in TV production, and because that was my hobby. That's what I loved to do, and I did it every day, whether you paid me or not. I just did it. And I think a lot of these folks here, do social media because they love it. It connects them to their friends, and et cetera, et cetera. They do it every single day. And wouldn't that be really cool if you could actually make a living at what you love and what you do every single day? So, and Jeff, you talked about levers and the second one. Paths and levers. So that was a good answer. And Peter had an answer as well. But anything you guys want to add as far as, okay, how do I get paid for something I love with social media specifically?
Yeah, I'll just say one of the interview questions I always ask when I get candidates in our office space is, what are you passionate about? And hopefully there's an answer that's outside of your work, or it relates to your work in some way. And I think from my perspective, the more passionate you are, the more willing you're going to be to take time out of your everyday life to engage in those activities, whether it's on the clock or off. And you're going to be outgoing, and you're going to be connecting to people who may not be able to help you, but they're going to say yes. People hate saying no, so I'd say always just ask, and you'll likely get an informational interview. You'll likely get what you're looking for, a free resource, a tip, some advice. I think passion is really one of the most central pieces to being successful in this industry, because if you can't speak about something with passion and really invest in it, then you're just showing up, which isn't great.
It's funny, I just hired 2 people this year, and obviously I'm building a company, and my business plan is to get to 100 in 10 years, so see how that goes. But when I hire, I look for very specific skill sets. So in this business, particularly with digital media, because I think it encompasses different aspects beyond that with content and other things. Relationships, if you're a relationship builder and you can interact with people skills, that is number one. Because, I mean, if you're going to be out on the front face of a company, you have to be able to manage a community, and you cannot freak out if somebody totally poops on your day. And I had to really not curse there. That was hard. But you know what I mean? Because people say nasty things all day online. And so I hired somebody with great relationship skills. My first hire was somebody with fantastic writing skills. I cannot underemphasize how much bad writing I see and really craptastic communication skills. I mean, let's be honest, okay? The second word in what we're talking about is media. And if you can't talk, you can't participate. And that's, it's really hard to hire somebody that cannot communicate coherently. So either writing skills or visual asset skills like video. And by the way, videographers are making bank, man. Number 2 investment right now from CMOs in 2015. Number 1, social ads. Number 2, video. And then lastly, you got to have an analytics person, and you talk to, I literally sat down, I was talking to Ray Day. He's the VP of Corporate Communications at Ford. He's a friend of mine. He's a nice guy who gave me 15 minutes of his time. But, Ray was talking about, we're struggling to figure out all the crazy amounts of data that we collect at Ford Motor Company. If you can understand data today, you're the most likely person in the room to become CMO.
The candid piece of advice I always give to somebody mostly new in their career is that your largest value add is the amount of time you can free up for your principal, right? So the person you work for, how much of their time can you free up? And in the communications business, a lot of that centers around something Melissa mentioned earlier, which is research. People need to get smart on things very quickly. And if you are good at getting somebody senior to you smart on something and being able to talk about it in a competent and comprehensive way, there is no price that is too much to pay for you, because you are eliminating hours out of their day that they're going to waste trying to learn something that you can just tell them. But falling into that are all the skills I already mentioned. not only do you need to be smart enough to understand what it is that you need to capture, it's not just scrolling through your Twitter feed. It's building, to use the social media example, it's building the list, it's doing the research, it's analyzing the commentary, it's seeing what people are saying, pulling all of that together, and then distilling it down into one page, one paragraph, one sentence that you can tell the boss before he goes into the meeting, here's what you need to say, just trust me. And if they trust you, you're in. You're good.
They pretty much got it all covered, and with the exception of I know at least one MBA. Most of you are going to be coming into fairly entry-level jobs, and in communications firms, that is research. And those answers, if you can't, it's not even learning the research skills is one thing, but how do you communicate it? And I'll tell you, even coming into the firm at my level, I would greenlight briefs that were probably I shouldn't have, and our CEO would lose his head. Because if he can't read one piece of paper and sort of be an expert, then it's not well written, and that goes back to the writing piece. So the old guard are going to assume that because you're social media experts, you don't know how to actually write. Because they think you all communicate in, like, you think you are is 2 letters and not 2 words. And so you need to prove them wrong by showing up and being a damn good writer in old school grammar and conveying, great ideas very quickly, very efficiently, very effectively. And that's how you get noticed. And then and this is just life, bust your ass. Work as hard as you can. The old rule I was always told when I was growing up is that if you bust your tail for the first 6 months of any job in any position, they will always just assume you're busting your tail from that point on.